Okay, cool. So
Mm.
let's be honest. So soft UX is not always easy to prioritize. We live in a world of deadlines, roadmaps, and MVPs. Sometimes done trumps thoughtful. Sometimes fast overrides feels right. Sometimes you're asked to squeeze a complex problem into a 2 week sprint. But here's the truth, even when speed is king, we can still sneak kindness in the process. Because soft UX is not about perfection, it's about presence. So, examples can be add helpful defaults to a rushed form, write a warm confirmation message after payment, so not just like thanks, got your money. Provide a status update so users don't feel forgotten. Ask, what can we do in the sprint to make this feature feel a little bit more human? So, soft UX is the small stuff that still fits even when time doesn't. And sometimes those soft touches are the things users remember most. So, I know you might face pushback. You might hear, we don't have time for this, but you can lead by example. You can frame these decisions not as nice to haves, but as risk reducers, trust builders, and retention factors. But of course, what if you're the only one thinking this way? What if you don't have a UX team? That brings us to our next point. Okay, so I understand not every company has a UX team. Not every product has a designer attached to it. But every product can be more human. If you're a founder, developer, marketer, or let's say a support agent, you can still bring soft UX into the room because UX is not a title, UX is a practice. Ask, would I understand this error message if I was new here? Test your product on someone unfamiliar. Slow down the most critical flows. Replace submit with something a bit more specific. Use inclusive and respectful language throughout. So you don't need fancy tools, you just need awareness and you need care. You can shadow a user support call, read app reviews on competitor products, ask one real person how they feel using your product, watch someone try it with no instructions. I personally love a good Reddit group thread. So what I do is I'll actually go on Reddit and see what people talk about certain products to get a feel of things also. So soft UX starts when someone in the room decides to ask a different question, not how can we ship faster, but how can we make the experience a bit more kinder? And as our tools get smarter, especially with AI, our attention to humanity will matter even more. So the future of UX isn't mechanical, it's mindful. So we all know that AI is generating wireframes, testing flows, writing alt text, and drafting copy. Our tools are getting way smarter and faster. But just because something is efficient doesn't mean it's emotionally aware. Just because it works doesn't mean it resonates. So, for example, a chatbot might answer a question but doesn't reassure. An AI generated layout might be usable, but is it warm? A flow might convert, but does it actually connect with people? So that's where we come in. AI can help us scale, but we need to remember that soul is still handcrafted. We still need designers who ask, how will this make someone feel? Writers who know how to reassure, researchers who see the story behind data. So, soft UX isn't a luxury in the AI era, it's the anchor. It's what keeps products human, relevant, and trustworthy. Because real empathy doesn't come from algorithms, it comes from people who shape them. AI might be doing the heavy lifting, but only we can do the softening of the edges. In a world that's rapidly being automated, feeling is a new frontier because when someone uses your product, they don't remember the tool that it was built with, they'll remember how it made them feel. So, soft UX is quiet craft, but its impact echoes through trust, clarity, emotion, and care. So go back to your team, your projects, your backlogs, and your roadmaps, and ask, where can we soften the edges? Because that's where UX becomes unforgettable. That's where humans feel seen, and that's where our work truly begins. But yeah, that's it. I'm ready for the questions.
I
Thank
have a
you.
ton, but
Yay.
I'd love for Liesel to kind of ask a few, and for people in the text chat to also um, pop up a few questions in the text chat, because yeah, if anyone knows anything about me, is once I get going, like, yeah, GG.
I've got a comment. It's
Yeah.
just an experience I had today, which resonates with what you said. Because I had to do a school run, but it's not on a calendar. The kids are writing exams and they call you when school is done because they end at different times. And I had meetings scheduled. So I was running out with my phone in my hand. I was going to do the meeting that I asked somebody to do virtually face to face. I now had to do from the car. And I ran out with my phone. And as I opened Google Meet, it asked me for if I want to have the new version or something. And I didn't actually, I just wanted to use the old version. I just like in that moment, and I couldn't, Google Meets just wouldn't. It still asked me, do I want to use, but it was unclickable. I couldn't go and say. And at the beginning of your talk, it resonated with me. It's like that experience that I had there. I just missed the meeting start time by 3 minutes. I was completely flustered. And yeah, it's that I think it plays in with what you said. It's like that softer side of UX, like living in this crazy world where you have to do all of these things.
Yeah.
And sometimes you rely on your phone to do some work with, and then that happens, you know.
Definitely. Yeah. It's so interesting that they didn't at least, well, I haven't seen the pop up, but it's very interesting that they didn't at least ask, um, like, just continue with the old version or do it later or something like that. The fact that they were like, do it now,
They had
is
they had
interesting.
the sentence that
Yeah.
there's an option, but it was unclickable. So I couldn't just go back to the old version, which was very weird. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah.
maybe they wanted to release the feature too quickly.
Yeah. But I could imagine it's like it's meeting time. Maybe send an email or some other form to let the user know they need to upgrade.
Yeah.
It's also like it's possible that there might also have been a security vulnerability. So when you have security vulnerabilities, you kind of just want to force people onto the new version, because, and I think, geez, sorry, I'm already getting to my question, but I'd like to like maybe have that as the starting point for when I start asking my question. Yeah, here's a great one from Simba. How can UX designers and developers better collaborate when communicating emotional and user-centric feedback without stepping on each other's toes? I have also so many thoughts on that, but yeah, Salama.
So, what I currently do, like in my practices, even where I currently work and where I've worked, is I make sure that developers are brought in very early in the stage. So, I know, of course, you guys have hectic schedules, a lot of demand and things like that. But we do make sure that the developers are put in early so that at least their voice is heard. And even as I go through the whole process from wireframe to actually high fidelity prototypes, I have meetings and one-on-ones with them, even before I show business. So I'll be like, look, okay, this is the design. Is this something you can do in terms of your capacity currently? Or in terms of the design system that we have, is this something that we can work with? So it's a bit more collaborative and not just bringing them in at the end and like, here you go, design this. It's bringing them in the process throughout as we go with the design. So I've heard that definitely bringing them in the beginning really helps with collaboration and they feel a part of it. They don't just feel like, okay, this is a task they need to do. They've had the chance to voice their opinions, whether it's technicalities or whether it's design constraints that they might have a feeling on. So yeah, definitely like a court case, we all sit and we all come with different ideas and we talk about it. So yeah, I'd definitely say involve them in the process. Don't just have them at the end of the prototype.
My sentiments are kind of very similar. Is I think I've realized that it's very hard to kind of give advice in terms of how to get a good process, how to do this well, because situations and people are so complex, and I don't want to use the word special, but situational. So you might have this one person who's like, he's always derailing things, and you want to kind of talk, and he's like just going into the weeds, and you're like, dude, just focus. Or there's this one guy who's like, he really wants to kind of, he always has something to say. He always has something to say. Like, he'll never just like let you have the final word or whatever. So you have like all these human dynamics, and then you also like sometimes have kind of management stuff where management forces down a specific waterfall type flow where you don't really have a say and so forth. But I do think what I've realized is that it's much easier to speak to what are the things that are hindrances to kind of like building things of a certain quality. And first and foremost, what you said is like, I don't believe in handovers. I would die on that hill. Like I've never seen a handover add value. It always detracts value. And the only reason why people do it is because everyone's doing it. And also it's not fun working collaboratively. And I also think like the corporate world has a very shallow understanding of collaboration. Collaboration is just a very hand-wavy thing. Real collaboration is, it might take longer. It, might like make the process more difficult, but it tends to have a better quality as an output. So I've seen a lot of like things that really hamper the process, but like I think what you said is like spot on. Is there's a level of vulnerability that is needed, where you're like, okay, cool, I'm letting you into the inner circle. You're going to be part of it from the beginning. And even if you see my process and you think like, this person has no idea what they're doing, or look at this stupid design they made, I think it's like you just need to be vulnerable, and you have to be like, okay, cool, you're going to be part of it from the beginning, even if I don't know where we're going, or I don't know where we're going is going to look, or I'm going to look like an absolute fool or whatever. And like I've seen that's usually especially working with students as well, that's usually the biggest impediment, is like people just don't want to be that vulnerable in terms of their process. They want to go away and disappear and like get it ready for presentation and then come and show it. But the problem is then you've already walked quite a bit in terms of decisions that were made, and some of those decisions might have been on faulty assumptions of things that you don't know or misunderstood, or you don't understand the technical constraints. So 100%. There's another good question here. Is there anything interesting that is different from how developer thoughts differ when discussing design and functionality compared to anybody else? I can also, like, sorry for hogging this, but I can also speak because I have a foot in both worlds, both in development and design. But I'd be curious what your thoughts are first and foremost.
So what I've noticed from my experience, developers are really involved in terms of like the technicality. So what I have started to do a lot of the times is, if it's possible, I always say if possible, because I know developers are very busy, is actually have them in user testing sessions, or at least give them feedback from what happened in user testing, so that they kind of can start thinking from the user side and not only from the technicalities, as in like, look, this is what I've developed, it's always worked, it should work, it should also work here. Because I always say in the different companies that I've worked, the users are different, they all have different needs. So definitely have them in user testing so they can be like, oh, okay, like I get it. I see how the users are actually using this. How can technology, how can the development process help leverage and make it much more easier for the user? So that's what I've seen. They're quite more on the technical side, as in, time, deadlines, and okay, we have these tools, if we try use custom tools and things like that. So that's the differences that I've noticed. But as I said, like I have been like I've developed before, so I also understand where they're coming from. So I really do try to like be in between and think of like as a UX designer for the user and how the design needs to look, but also from a development point of view. I understand, yes, there are constraints. I mean, if we're using a design system and you want to come with a custom component, that might be a bit tricky, or it might just take more time to design the thing.
Yeah, I think from my side, one thing I like, this comes up all the time. You know, I had this discussion so many times at UX South Africa. Was it this year? No, last year. And like the thing I always say is, I think this is a bit of a reductionistic like dichotomy, because like as someone who does both development and design, there are some developers who are closer to designers than other types of developers. So for example, you know, like a front-end developer might have more in common, might speak more of the same language, think in the same way, that like to a designer compared to another developer who's maybe writing assembly code, or you know, like is kind of doing like database optimizations or whatever, or DevOps or whatever, you know. So especially if you're an interaction designer, I do find like, once again, you know, an interaction designer might actually be closer and have more in common with like a front-end developer than they might with kind of a very strategic like BA UX person. You know, like, because they both think in buttons and toggles and things opening and whatever, whereas like a strategic UX role might think, which is technically still design, but it might think more in terms of journeys and funnels and market segments and, you know, onboarding and, you know, retention, and those things are not about the actual thing you see in front of you. So I think like I'd just be a bit cautious in terms of that dichotomy of developers one side and design. I think it's kind of a spectrum, and on that spectrum there are designers and developers who have more in common than with one another than with other developers or other designers. The other thing as well that I've also found is that generally I find when there's friction, this seems like a cop-out to blame it on management, but it is. It's a process problem. I have a very hard time. You know, I've worked with some real assholes before, but like that's the exception. You know, most people are doing this because they want to build stuff that they can be proud of. They want to build stuff that are useful. No one goes out there saying like, I want to build the worst product ever. I want to like build something with the most bugs and is the most like unintuitive to use. Like I think it's just like what I often find is sometimes a bit of that culture, like it's not managed properly. So people start getting pitted against one another, and it tends to get a bit more of a gladiatorial kind of vibe where it's kind of you're fighting for your own like survival and your own interests and whatever, because it's like a free for all. But I think like, and maybe, you know, that's a nice tie-in with your talk is like, I think having that kind of empathy and compassion, and just like starting from a point of like, listen, we're all here because we want to do something that's of value. Like, how can we use that as a starting point and figure out like, you know, like even if we're talking past one another, how can we pursue that common goal that we have? Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's another one. Have you ever had to use your UX Jedi mind tricks to convince someone the user is actually right? And how did that go? I assume that's aimed at you, because I don't have any UX Jedi mind tricks.
To be honest, I don't have any mind tricks. I basically just do a lot of research and use previous case studies to state my case. And also user testing, of course, really does play a part. So even if there's not enough time, so I'll just make a quick poll about like a certain thing that needs to be changed, push that out, see what the users say, and then I'm like, look, but this is what they need, and I said this, and here's the evidence of me saying that. So a lot of the times, in terms of being what has helped me as a UX designer is you need to back up your statements. You can't just say you have a gut feeling, like I feel like the user's gonna like this. I don't think that works. You need to have some psychological research that you do to understand users more, talk to your users, have some actual some actual evidence, like we're in a court or something, some actual evidence to show that, this is what users want. So definitely not tricks, just make sure that I have some evidence to back up what I say.
Then there's one from my side. Like, please, everyone, you're more than welcome to ask more questions in the text chat. I'll just throw them on the screen. So from my side, have you don't have to name names, or you don't even have to answer this question, but have you found yourself in a situation, I've definitely found myself in a situation where you kind of realize that you're just there to rubber stamp things. You're just there to make it seem like there's some type of user-centeredness happening. Like I often talk about design theater. You just need to do all that, and so everyone, it looks like cool. We're a good company. We're interested, but like it's like it's clear to you that there's only priority given to the user when it doesn't compete with other concerns. When it doesn't, so I'd be curious whether you found yourself in those type of situations, and what do you do in those type of situations? Do you just be like, it is what it is. I'm just going to do damage control. At the very least, I'm just going to prevent the company and the team and whatever from just being all out predatory, or tricking the user or whatever. So but I'm not going to get this company to actually care about users. So I'd be curious what your thoughts are on that.
So very interesting. So yes, that has happened before. But of course, if I'm in a space where I see, UX is not taken seriously, I try to leave the situation. But also, of course, I know not everyone is able to do that sometimes. I mean, unemployment rate is crazy. So if you're in a space and you feel like UX is not taken serious, and you're trying to find another job, and I mean it's not easy. Not everyone can just pack up and leave their job and move to another one, because people have responsibilities and things like that. But what I would say is I would really just try to advocate as possible. So I've noticed that a lot of people actually don't get what UX is. So that's why they're kind of like, it's not important. Like they'll say, oh, you just do pretty designs, or you do pretty pictures and things like that. So what I definitely recommend is making sure that actually everyone does understand what UX is and what UI is. It's not just pretty pictures. So for example, BM actually does this very well, is that there's compulsory UX training when everyone joins. No matter what department you're from, you have to do the training to understand what UX and UI is. So that obviously when you are working on products, let's say even if you are in marketing, or you are a developer, or you are a product owner, whatever it is, you understand the concept of UX and how to implement it in your daily work, in what you work on. So I can say they've really gotten that great. So I would definitely try to advocate for that. Have workshops and be like, look, I really need to do a workshop and make sure that everyone actually understands what I do and the work that goes into it. And obviously, if you can leave, because yeah, if possible, but I know it's not possible for everyone. But yeah, definitely, at least just first step, just make sure everyone actually understands what UX UI is.
And I mean, that's not something that's unique to UX. I get that question quite a lot as well from junior developers, as this company is just doing they are just not this thing that they're building, it's gonna crash and burn in 2 years. There's no way this thing is not gonna fall apart. They are not like servicing their technical debt. They're just pushing stuff out. And no one's really thinking about how are we going to maintain this, or whatever. So, and then it's also that same question. Okay, you probably need to leave, but it's easy for, as you mentioned, for someone like me or for you to say. But yeah, it's tricky. I have a lot of sympathy for someone who is in a situation like that. Here's another question. When building a product as a solo developer, would it be better to go to Figma and plan the application first, or just start building to validate the idea first? I have some thoughts on this, but yeah, let's hear yours.
So I would say Yes, start with Figma, but that's like it's so broad. So I think first actually understand what the problem is. So like have workshops where you understand the problem, understand what you're actually building, have all the different stakeholders involved, whether it's get some people who use your product or get the owner of the business who you're building a product for, because I'm guessing it might be a freelancing gig. I could be wrong. But just get a lot of people involved to actually understand like the problem. What are you trying to solve? Like what are we actually doing? And also understand like your target market. Who are the people that you're designing for? So there's so many processes that happen before you actually get into Figma and you actually start like designing something. So I would, yeah, definitely go through the process of understanding what your problem is, who is your target audience, um, what does the flow need to look like, what is the user journey, what tools and things do we have that we can leverage that to make things much more easier. So for example, if it's something like a loyalty program, maybe use Cheetah, which is like a very good loyalty program tool that you can use. So there's so many things that happen before, and then you can go into Figma and start doing your wireframing or your prototyping. I would say start with wireframing on Figma. Some people just jump into the high fidelity, which is also okay. But definitely, yeah, start with your sketches, start with your wireframing, and then go into your prototype. And also just make sure the right people are there within the whole process. I know you're a solo developer, but just make sure that you at least add people to the whole process that you're in.
Yeah. So my read of this question, like to me, it sounds like it's someone who's building kind of like their own product, probably with the intent to have it be a business or something. And so I think my first suggestion would be, well, I think the biggest factor would be like, what is your technical level of expertise? Because that's going to be your constraint. Worst case scenario, if you are not good at design, then you might have something that looks really ugly and is unintuitive. If you don't have technical experience to build that type of thing, you're just not going to have anything. Because you're not going to be able to build it. So I guess it depends on like where your skill set lies. What I found is that for me personally, as someone that is involved in a lot of startups and also does dev and design, is that if you are the person who's doing the design and the dev, which is actually very rare in the industry, because a company would rather pay two people and have it be done in half the time than pay a single person and have it take twice the amount of time. But like when it's solo projects or whatever, you can actually save a lot of time by just kind of doing rougher like ideas, because things can be cryptic. You might like use a piece of pen and paper and go like, okay, cool, this thing here, because you know what that means. Obviously, when you have a designer and a developer, you can't have it be that cryptic. So you need to now draw it out and you have to add notes and whatever. But for myself, like when I'm designing and just writing the code, I just literally I just go Fig Jam. I don't even go Figma. I literally just like a square here, a circle here. Oh, this is going to be, this thing is going to open. Oh yeah, if you go here, like, okay, cool, but then this is going to take you here. And I just like literally just sketch it out. Because I think there's also a danger of over designing, where you, and I think the value of design and the value of going into something like Figma and so forth is that it is cheaper than actually building the stuff. So you can get a bit of a sense of, cool, where are we going? What decisions are we making very cheaply by just drawing stuff on a page and dragging things around and not actually coding it up. But be careful that you're not spending so much time there where you could have actually just started building the thing. But it's a hard question to answer, because it's going to depend so much on like your
Like
specific
timeline and things also.
Yes. But I want to say, just as if you're a developer and you want to get more into the world of design, there's actually a lot of phenomenal resources. There's refactoring design, which is really great. It kind of looks at some basic easy wins of things that you might not think about if you're kind of just doing the development and so forth. Basic stuff like like just explaining like like kind of like salience in terms of cool, the most important thing, the second most important thing, and just common mistakes people make when they don't have experience in design. So yeah, I would look into those. Cool. Let me pop this one up. Katlego, how can one go about finding a balance between getting the UI UX of a product right while also ensuring a product is shipped on time? Oh, I don't want to touch this question like from a mile. I have no idea how to answer this.
I guess that's where like your whole MVP concept comes from. So I think from all my years of experience, when I started, I just wanted the thing to be perfect. I was like, if this is going live, it needs to be perfect. Everything needs to be there. Every feature needs to be there. It needs to work the way it needs to work. But as I like went through all these different years, I was like, wait a second, like the first MVP doesn't need to be like as perfect. You can work on things. You can be like, okay, we're putting this on the backlog and we're going to work on it, let's say next month or 2 months, etc. So in terms of designing, it really is like a phase. We're really phasing things in. It's like a phase approach. It's like, okay, let's work with this, and then we can add on this later, and we can add on that. And I've also noticed if you come with products with a whole lot of features in the beginning, it's really going to overwhelm the users. So it is better to bring in features slowly. And it's also great to even test. You can put in a feature in its simplest form, see how it works, what can we iterate, what can we change, and then you can add on that as time goes. So yeah, I would definitely say just understand the concept of an MVP, but of course don't make it too sad that it's just sad in general, but it's actually working. And then move on and think of more ideas and things that you can bring in. So even every time when I go through my design process, I even have little columns where I'll be like, okay, this is for now, this is for later. And I also make sure I discuss this with my product owners and my developers and make sure we're on the same line, that we understand, okay, this is what we can work with and this is what's going to come up next. So yeah, definitely don't think it's the end. Like it's live, oh my gosh, it's the end, and like I'll never be able to add anything new. Like that's not it. You're gonna do user testing. You're gonna come up with more ideas and things like that. So yeah, that's how I see this question. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, and that's not even like a weird Salama thing, like that is like I would say that is agreed upon best practice. Is it's not even just MVP. You have your MVP, check, it's done, and now we actually start the design. Like that is the approach. Sorry about the noise in the background. The kids are going wild. Is you kind of do your design in layers. And once again, it's that vulnerability. You need to be able to be vulnerable and be like, this is a very basic, crude implementation, but it's a first step. And like people might laugh at it and be like, oh, look at this guy. What? He just made a table. Like, what kind of designer is this? What are we paying him for? But it's also like facilitating that process. You kind of layer. And when you do it that way, like you don't really think about shipping on time or whatever. You just think about quality. So you kind of like your scope grows. So I think there's this idea of the iron triangle, which is you have three things. You have quality, you have cost, and you have time. And the only real thing you can usually control is quality. Generally, time, it depends, but more often than not, you'll find yourself in a place where you scope that quality, so because things happen, people get sick, someone quits their job, whatever, you need to but like I don't really want to go into this too much because once again, this is considered best practice. You can find a lot of stuff out there of people that explain this a lot better than me, and no shade Samala, but there are people that spend their life kind of nailing down these concepts. And so a great one is Shape Up, by the team at 37 Signals Basecamp. Like they have a whole methodology which they call Shape Up. There's also kind of like Lean UX, which kind of like where a lot of this idea of the MVP and so forth come from, and so forth. There's a ton of material out there, which kind of like spends a bit more time kind of helping you figure out like how to implement something like this, because sometimes it is also a managerial thing. The salesperson goes to the client and says, yeah, we'll have like the most amazing app for you by Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like, cool, designer, get on it, So, and there's like, what? Like, I wasn't even involved in this discussion. So, yeah. Okay.
Can I've got something to add. I am not from a design or a technical background. I am actually involved in running companies, and sometimes I sit here and I'm just flabbergasted by I've adopted all these ways of working that was actually, it came to me and it was taught to me by just being involved in the UX and the design, and how does UX collaborate or work with technical, and all those concepts I use in daily running of a business. The way that I work is I would never ask people to build a performance management system and build the whole thing, and then we just launch it. And then we've spent 6 months building a performance management system that we haven't tested internally. Like in my mind, it just doesn't make sense to work like that. So if I roll out something like that in a company, I would go, we build the smallest version of that first, and we make sure that our employees know that this is our MVP or our V1 of this. Post that, we go and we collect feedback from the whole organization. We take that feedback. What was the friction points? What did you struggle with? Was it too long? Was it too short? We take that feedback and we build it into the next iteration. And then 5 years down the line, you've got something that is like built for what you need it for. And you didn't spend 6 months or a year building it before you could even do it. Because that's the other problem, is if you take too long in building a system, you almost never get to the point where you use the system. At some point, it just fails because you never launched it. The next manager comes in or the next person comes in and they start a new project from scratch. And whatever you did never sees the day, the light of day. And so all these principles are actually applicable in our work life, in the way that we design organizations and the way that we run organizations. And it's the same way you set up your kitchen. Are you really going to put the cups at the bottom and the kettle there? So it's I love these topics because I think it's so applicable to everyday life, but then also designing workplaces in a specific way.
And I think a lot of these ideas of you have one and done is kind of also very orthogonal to just like how we approach any other type of creative pursuit in our lives. So my background's actually in visual art, so I used to paint quite a bit. And okay, apologies, guys. I don't know how good the noise cancellation is, but like, and you paint over several days. Like you don't sit down and be I'm gonna start this painting now on a white canvas. In 2 hours, I'm going to be done. And like you kind of paint a bit, and then tomorrow you come back a bit and you look at it a bit and you're like, okay, cool, here a bit. And also you don't start at the top of the thing and just like a printer go like all the way down. You do a bit here, a bit there. And over the long span, that's generally how I approach my design as well. You do a bit here, and then like you get some feedback, and that's not that great. You revisit it, and then maybe you look at something else, and you're like, I'm not feeling that anymore that much. And given what I know now, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, let me stop talking because the kids are going absolutely ballistic. But yeah, I think you guys get what where I'm going at.
Definitely. Cool. Do you have other questions?
I think that was.
There is one which kind of like
one.
just is a kind of a bit of a similar to what I was asking about. Have you ever had a situation where your research was ignored? Which group of stakeholders are guilty of this most?
I'm trying to understand group of stakeholders. Like,
definitely not middle management. Definitely not middle management.
So in terms of research getting ignored, yes, it has happened, but that's when I always try to bring the users in. So I'm like, okay, this is the research that we've done. whether it's a desktop research or whatever, like we've read case studies and things like that. And then we bring in actual users to do the testing just to kind of see if our research aligns too. And a lot of the times, I mean, the users also kind of correspond with the research. And then that's only when, it's so funny, I don't know, when, as soon as you put users into the situation and they give their feedback, for some strange reason, that's only when stakeholders are like, oh, okay, now we see what you mean. So I've noticed that what really helps is getting users involved all the time. Even me, like with my developers, when we have issues, we're like, okay, we're going to do A to B testing. We're going to test your idea and we're going to test my idea, and we're going to see which does better and see what the users say. Even with stakeholders, they'll have their own idea of what it needs to be. It's like, okay, that's a good idea. Let's test this out and see what users say. So yeah, as I said, get users involved, even with your research. Try help your users back up what your research is saying.
Oh, yeah, I think we've gone through all of them. Yeah, I think like maybe ending off, what I would be interested to hear from you is kind of, are there any like good like books or articles or anything that you kind of found really insightful or valuable that you would recommend to others?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So there is this, I'm gonna try find the link to it. There is this amazing website that I absolutely love. I just need to find it in my favorites.
Otherwise, you can send it to me afterwards, and I
Great.
can just
Okay,
put it
perfect.
in the description. Yeah.
Well, basically, what it does is this brilliant website, and they've mapped it out really well, where it talks about different like psychological things of humans, and they also have like case studies. So let's say if there's the one about like people being biased, and then they'll actually have case studies, let's say from Amazon.com or things like that, where they actually like show how that actually works and how they practice that. So yeah, I will definitely share the link for that. I just need to look in my emails.
Awesome.
But I love that website. It's amazing. But that's literally like what I use every day. Oh yeah, so it's called growth.design. I don't think it's only for designers. I think it's literally for anyone who wants to understand the psychological part of like humans and how they make decisions on products in general. So yeah, also for marketers, I think it's amazing too. So yeah, that's my favorite one. I subscribed, I get the emails almost like every day. But yeah, growth.com, growth.design, amazing website.
Yeah, I just shared the link. I'm looking at it now.
Mm.
Like I can't believe I haven't heard of this before.
I'm gonna
Definitely
go.
check it out.
I'll be on there for a bit. I can tell.
Perfect. Yeah.
Interesting.
And they also have a course. I've been wanting to do it. They also have a really good course on like UX, if anyone is interested. But yeah, they also have free case studies because I know the course is quite expensive, but they have amazing case studies just to understand the human mind a bit more.
Do you know who's behind it? Yeah.
Oh, sorry?
Do you know who's behind it?
No, all I know it's like these two guys. I have them on LinkedIn. I'll double check. But UX designers, and they do like amazing things for so many different companies. Yeah, and also this is great for like stakeholders. Like show them this website, or like when you're going through different things in the back of your stuff, they have amazing places to help you with that testing.
Another thing as well, I don't know if you've read it, but it like a lot of the stuff you initially said in your talk kind of really sounded like you've read it, is Design for Real Life by Eric Meyer, and I'm not sure who his co-author is. I don't know if you know about it.
No, not that one.
Yeah.
Let me write it down. I'll check it out.
Hey. So it's actually, so Eric Meyer, he's actually very well known. He's actually very well known in the front end space, like specifically in CSS and so forth. And so here's and also like kind of in the world of interaction design and so forth. And so the book is broadly based on, so his daughter got cancer, and like then from that kind of he saw kind of the world of design from a different lens. So like so he looks at stuff. So when you go on like a hospital's website, what do you see? Like, oh, you see like a massive, like nice panoramic image, and like our mission and our values and meet our staff and whatever, and like when you and like so he would go on the site and he'd just be like, okay, cool, where's the oncology ward or whatever, and he wouldn't be able to find it on the website. It'd basically just be a digital brochure. So it's really interesting. So he kind of like talks about a lot of those things, like when you're kind of in distress and you're under pressure and going through something really emotionally turbulent and so forth, like how our experiences aren't designed for that. It's a phenomenal book. I highly recommend it. Yeah.
And it's sometimes when it matters most. Do you
Yeah.
remember Liz did a talk on
Spannenberg.
yes, was on that sort of nature inside a medical facility or
I
a
think she looked
hospital.
at a specific practice, a doctor's practice or something.
Yes.
Yeah. I've also watched an amazing talk at UX South Africa one year, where it was like someone who did work in terms of the experience of like dental like practices, and like how like kind of our perceptions of like dentists and all the fears associated with that, and so forth. And that was phenomenal. Yeah.
Yes, it's a fascinating topic. We should do another one.
Cool. But yeah, like I don't know how much more my kids are going to be able to handle. I probably need to go put them to bed. So
All good.
I think we can end it off there. Thanks so much, Salama. That was really great. I really appreciate it. I think what I really appreciated is like, I've listened to a lot of talks about kind of like bringing the more humane and kind of inclusive aspects to design and so forth, but I found them to be very idealistic. But what I really appreciated about yours is it's very much grounded in like reality and and some of the constraints of that reality, and like what things that impede our ability to do that and so forth, which is like really great. Because sometimes I listen to some of these talks and I'm like, yeah, like I know like you're just telling us what everyone would like to do, but how do we navigate the reality of working in a team and a company and so forth with our ideals? So I really appreciated that. That was really great. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. And then, Liesl, do we have anything lined up pretty soon?
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
I have no idea. That's why I was.
I've got no idea.
Okay, Liesl, tell us about the next upcoming event.
Check our Discord channel because we do post it there, and LinkedIn. Yeah, sorry guys, but there's definitely some upcoming events.
Yeah. I think we might have one coming up about being like with more focus on like kind of being self-taught and so forth, not having a formal background in design and development and so forth. But yeah, thanks so much, Salama. This is really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Sorry, just quickly, where can people find you?
Oh, LinkedIn, I guess. You guys can find LinkedIn. Yeah, not really into social media. LinkedIn. Let's do LinkedIn.
All right, let's do LinkedIn. Okay, I'll include a link in the video. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Bye.